we are endeavouring to sort of keep an eye on that through monitoring activities in Brussels. Sitting behind a lot of the developments for the textiles and clothing sector, and I'd say just I'm not going to speak in the detail of all of these slides. So bearing in mind a little bit about the uncertainty around recording of this, I would perhaps take notes just to safety. I hope we do find a technical way to record this, but we will have further webinars where we will pick up details. So what is new is that historically the electronics, clothing and packaging sectors have really had quite a volume of regulations coming out, particularly out of Brussels, really from the mid-90s. But what is new with the shift in the Commission's approach, particularly from starting in 2015 to 2020, is that the clothing and fashion sector has really come into the sort of scope of the Commission in terms of regulations for a variety of reasons. So really, the sector is really will be facing a whole series of new types of more product-related regulations, that it hasn't had to face before. So that's really a key thing about why taking this seriously is important. So the context of this, the Commission more holistically started to sort of focus on circular economy from 2015 with the first Circular Economy Action Plan. Then in the new Green Deal in 2019, they set out the second Circular Economy Action Plan, also laying out the EU strategy for circular and sustainable textiles, which really is a strategic document setting out the sort of intention of the Commission really to look at the sector. And also, very importantly, they put forward what has become known as the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products regulations. Within the Clean Industrial Deal 2023, the Circular Economy Act is alongside the Critical Raw Materials Act will come into force, and this is really a very big piece of regulation that the Commission is really prioritising, and we're waiting to hear a lot of the details. So the Circular Economy Act 2020 really set this goal of making sustainable products the norm in Europe, and really bringing in new products and new materials into the focus. And as I mentioned, back in 2022, the DG Environment put forward the strategy on sustainable and circular textiles. Whilst this is not a binding legal document, this is an important document in that it set out the sort of future vision around regulations, and we can now see from that document is a number of the regulations that are now being prepared or come in force, both specifically in the sector and more broadly, that will impact on the sector were outlined. So again, I mentioned the Circular Economy Act. It's a little bit of a lack of detail at the moment, even though it's due to be published in Q3, Q4. But really, it's setting out various measures in terms of potential amendments to existing regulations. But really, the key area, just cutting through the details, is to move from the current very linear approach within Europe in terms of materials and resources to a more circular one. So developing clearer rules in relation to secondary raw materials, building markets for secondary raw materials, increasing the quality of separately collected waste, and also reducing waste as well. So again, it seems to be so far been more focused around, or more of the information seemed to have indicated links to the electronics sector, but it's unclear at the moment whether anything specifically will come in that will impact on the clothing and fashion sector explicitly. It may be implicit because of the high volume of waste in the sector and environmental impact. So swiftly moving now into the EU's ESPR regulations. So this came into force in 2024. The goal is to make sustainable products the norm to drive circularity. Importantly, it's a framework directive that includes 6 different components. And the product regulation component, this builds on a very successful piece of regulation that the Commission developed called the Eco-Design Directive, brackets energy related products directive, that significantly reduced energy consumption in the use phase in the energy related products. So really it's a significant piece of regulation, but ESPR in the totality is a holistic piece of regulation. So again, shifting away from linear economy, common rules, empowering consumers, shifting towards a more circular economy. So the key thing is it aims to really expand significantly beyond a focus on reducing energy in the use phase of products, to bringing in a series of other aspects, up to 16 criteria that the Commission can choose from in terms of performance-based and information requirements. So it's a significant upgrading both by focus, but also by sector. Essentially, what they're also saying is that potentially all products and all sectors can face regulations. And it also brings in the so-called digital product passport, which is again a significant development and highly complex. So just in summary, there are 6 components to the ESPR. There's product regulations, there's amendments to the EU Ecolabel, there's a digital product passport, a ban on the destruction of unsold goods, green public procurement, and substances of concern. So there are different timelines associated with the development of these different sub-regulations. And as at this moment in time, the only regulation within ESPR that has been passed is the ban on destruction of unsold goods that was passed on the 9th of February. But these other regulations are moving forward, some in more detail and some with more clarity than others. So behind this, there is also a process. So there's the framework regulation, there's working plans, product-specific regulations, and there's within the preparation of the regulations, and particularly the product-based regulations and the other aspects, are preparatory studies that are completed by the Commission's sort of research and development unit, if you like, which is the JRC. What is also important in there is a consultation forum of several hundred experts, but also member states that really provide feedback. The Commission periodically reports to them, they provide feedback, and this iterates the process. So at the end of the regulatory process, then there's a 18 months adoption principle for regulations. So, excuse me, end of a cold, sorry about that. So the Eco-Design Forum is around 200 experts, with each member state being involved with several observers. Those observers include Norway and Iceland, but after digging in with a little bit of research, UK, for example, is not an observer, which is a little bit confusing to me, but I'm trying to find out more about that. So as I say, this is a review, an expert review forum for regulations. What is important, and again, I recommend that you have a look at this, it's only about 10 to 15 pages, is that there is a working plan that is set out, that is published online, that really sets out the ESPR and an energy labeling working plan. And why energy labeling is important is that there is some proposals that are still a little bit unclear to me about upgrading some of the energy regulations to also include circularity, which may well impact on the sector. So ESPR, I mean, a lot of uncertainty. You look in different places on the Commission's websites and you find different information. And what we understood is the back end of last year, the Unsold Goods Act in effect would be published, but again, this was delayed and recently published. There is, in terms of digital product passport, there's supposed to be an act on DPP registration, but we've seen no evidence of this. One thing that seems to be fairly clear is that the Commission is targeting the regulations for textiles to 2027. Precise date is unclear, but it seems to be this this time scale that we're looking at. Who will be covered under ESPR? Again, remembering there are 6 components to this, and particularly looking at the product regulations, it will be all people placing products on the market, whether they be manufacturers, authorized representatives, or importers. So, really, it covers a lot of different stakeholders. So focusing specifically on the product regulations, there are performance requirements and information requirements, and particularly in terms of the eco-design or performance requirements, that this is what I was highlighting previously. Here, the focus was on reducing energy consumption in the eco-design directive, essentially for the electronic sector, but now the Commission has set out 16 potential criteria that they may utilize in relation to different product-based regulations. So the first 2 sectors that are being targeted are as in finished products, so textiles and clothing, and in intermediate products, it's iron and steel. So the likelihood is that the Commission will identify maybe 2 or 3 key performance requirements in relation to the product regulations. And for example, they may well be different for textiles and clothing compared to iron and steel because of the different composition of the products, the different environmental impacts. So topics like recycled content, durability, repairability may be part of the requirements linked to textiles and clothing, and I say may. There are various indications, but again, this is not stated directly. There are supposed to be separately horizontal requirements that are being looked at to cover all the products and sectors, as well as recycled content. But again, this seems to be primarily at this stage focused on electronic products. So the slightly confusing part of this, again, that is still not clear to me, is there seems to be, for example, there may be horizontal requirements related to repairability, but then there may be specific requirements in product-based regulations on repairability. So again, this is part of the considerable uncertainty that is out there. So the Commission didn't just sort of put the finger in the air and choose a sector. They went through a very rigorous process, and really they defined textiles and clothing as having high impact from a sort of stakeholders perspective, and high potential for improvement. So again, I won't highlight this again. So high improvement potential, large market share, major environmental impact. Again, within the regulations, the particular study that backs up the Commission's regulatory approach is including certain regulations, but also excluding other regulations. Including certain product categories, but excluding others. So mainly, it's clothing and apparel, and not soft furnishings, etc., etc. So they have this quite very rigorous process, a series of tasks that they're completed. They're now at task 6, and if you're interested, they publish different reports online. So they've just published their 3rd milestone report, and best of luck. There's a 500-page report there, but usually a 30-page summary that has just been published in December, January. That really sets out a lot of the current detail in terms of their thinking, and this interesting, having attended this expert webinar in there, they brought in new terminology into this that again is slightly unclear. It seems that they're now talking about, instead of durability potentially being one of the areas of performance requirements, they're talking about this term robustness. Now, I've not seen that discussed before. I don't know if this is a well understood term as a substitute for durability. It has certain connotations in the English language. So again, this is why one needs to keep up to date with what is going on, because new terms may be brought in, and one needs to understand what this means. So 2026, there'll be an impact assessment, and essentially, as per our understanding, the product regulation will come in at some stage in 2027, and then there will be an 18-month derogation for it to go into member state regulations. So the likelihood is the earliest time that the regulations will come into effect is 2029, pending the date that it's published. So also, in addition to the product-based regulations, there are proposals to amend the EU Ecolabel, in alignment with the ESPR label, or in line with the ESPR, excuse me, and develop some fast-track compliance mechanism that will automatically meet the ESPR standards. So clearly, it has to follow very closely the regulations in terms of, for example, the aspects, those maybe 2 or 3 aspects the Commission will focus on: durability, robustness, recycled content, whatever those final decisions are in terms of performance requirements. But again, the current Ecolabel approach does not differentiate products based on function, so they're going to need to sort of change the approach to this, and the Commission is working on this. They're consulting on this, and for example, they did a consultation where they put out various concepts for a label that would bring in circularity. Again, in another report, and this is the challenge, there's so many reports, another very long report, several hundred pages, on labels and classification. They also put out a concept in that report of a label that would cover both unique identifier mechanisms to link to DPP, environmental impact, carbon footprinting, and also circularity. So I don't quite know how in reality one is going to fix this all into a physical label, but there are these proposals going on. So digital product passport, very challenging area, very significant area, a lot of myths about digital product passport. So it's a digital tool that incorporates a unique identifier, QR code, for example, and it's a means to digitally collect and communicate information aligned to the requirements of ESPR. There will be separate regulations that are completed on the ESPR for products, for the different product categories. So following the ESPR regulation for clothing and textiles in 2027, there is then slated to be a separate regulation for textiles DPP, although again the dates for this are unclear. So it aligns a variety of different aspects of the ESPR, enhancing traceability, allowing access, updates, and input by a variety of stakeholders, ensuring data accuracy, and it should be tailored to an item batch or model levels. Although it DPP originated in the ESPR regulations, you'll now see it being picked up in other regulations. So again, there is this sort of broader development of the idea of the DPP. As we understand it, the battery regulation that is separate from ESPR is moving ahead and may well be the first DPP to be published. So for those of you who are really watching this space and looking for details, that may be something to look at in terms of, let's say, generic lessons to be learned. So again, there's going to be a registration process and a portal where different stakeholders will be able to input and engage. This is the important slide for DPP. DPP separates into the how and the what. So the how is about what I think of as the sort of information architecture, or let's call it crudely, the data buckets that are associated with DPT, this digital tool. So there's been a significant amount of progress around this information architecture for DPP. So as I mentioned, just in a short while, there'll be a series of CEN European standards published or are slated to be published by the end of the first quarter. So there's a lot of guidance on different technical aspects of the DPP. But the what part of this is not clearly defined yet. The what part of this will not be defined until we have the product-based regulations, and then specifically the textiles regulation in 2027, and then more specifically the textiles DPP regulation. One can sort of speculate on what the what might be, but that's the individuals reading the regulations starting to sort of understand the way the Commission is thinking, but the Commission has not published this specifically. So any consultants or any software suppliers that are suggesting to you that they have a compliance scheme, avoid like the plague. This is incorrect. We know there are already missold contracts and consultancy going on, and there are examples where companies are trying to sort of extricate themselves from arrangements. So be very careful about software and consultancy suppliers trying to indicate that they have the magic bullet. This is not correct. You may choose to engage with organizations to consult with to give you best information, but nobody has a magic bullet at the moment. So DPP aligns to different aspects of ESPR that are covered in different articles in the regulation. And again, I'm not going to go through in detail in this, covering topics like traceability, accessibility, data structure, and the registry and portal. So again, this is something that is very detailed. It is it is something that, again, within the person, that I suggest you start to allocate to monitoring the regulation. This should be a topic area that is put on the agenda, as it really is. It's quite a significant development. So again, our best guess at this is these dates. Again, do not take these as crystal clear, as the absolute dates. This is what our best estimates are. Somewhere also, supposedly in July 2026, there will be a DPP registry, law setting up the overall system, and then the Commission will be appointing the suppliers to design the system as we understand it. Again, this is from CEN-CENELEC, and this really shows that the registry is targeted mid-2026 with the appointment of a system supplier, and then the DPP is slated again later in 2027, and as we mentioned, the actual product regulation slated early in 2027. So again, the Commission is working on this. So there will be, I believe, reports in due course. But again, a complicated area that it is all part of this, providing more transparency, more communication. The part of the challenge for this, again, is that within the standardization processes that I'll just highlight here, particularly European standardization processes, there are many requests by countries outside of Europe or outside the same countries that include the member states, UK, and others, for supplier countries, India, China, etc., to join the European standardization process because of the nature of the supply chain. But because of the nature of European standardization, non-CEN members in terms of countries are unable to join that process. I personally see that as a bit of a challenge for European standardization in the sector. And I'm not quite sure how that is going to be dealt with. So there's a lot of standardization going on. CEN, that I'll talk about in a little bit of detail, has been working really actively on this. Then there are other DPP activities happening in a broad-based trade-related ISO standard that is ISO TC 154. There is also a proposal for a joint technical committee between ISO and IEC on digital product passport, and I believe the voting was due to happen in November, December, but I'm not clear if that has moved forward. Also within IEE, there is a DPP activity, and interesting and notably, China has also started to work on their own DPP. So that perhaps is in relation more to textiles and clothing being imported into or placed on the market in China. So effectively, CEN were asked by the Commission to put together standardization activities related to digital product passport, and effectively those activities started in 2024. And what has happened is 4 working groups have set up around key aspects of the information architecture part of this, and these standards were due to be delivered at the back end of last year, with a view to being published in March 2026. Again, I'm uncertain about whether they have now been where they are in the precise process. Very significant involvement, 400 experts from 20 countries, and this is the pre-EN standardization. So these are the working items where information is in a draft proposal covering a significant part of the system. So there's been a highly intense process going on to produce these different standards, and as I say, they are slated to be published on the 31st of March this year. And again, this process again shows this proposal of publishing on the 31st of March. So again, there will be guidance out there, but again, that is guidance about the technical parts of this. But again, we still have this challenge of the what will be in there, what will be the content. So the rules for the destruction of unsold goods. So this was again published on the 9th of February. There's an implementing act, which introduces introduces a standardized format for business to disclose the volumes of unsold goods they discard. This will apply from the 2027, as we understand it. There's also a delegated act that specifies exemptions for the destroying of unsold apparel and footwear, such as legal and safety risks, damaged goods, and what circumstances one is permitted to claim these exemptions. So these will primarily apply to large companies, and again, and as we understand it, there will be this point that it is now passed. They will apply from July 2026, with the implications becoming online in 2027. There will be delays for medium-sized enterprises, and for smaller companies, they will be exempt. Green public procurement. So there has been voluntary green public procurement applied by many member states. And really, this is the idea to move towards mandatory requirements in line with the Ecodesign for Sustainable Products regulations linked to different product categories. And the details of this are as yet unclear. The Commission is working on this within their preparatory study, and there is due to be reports published and further information provided in 2026. Again, also unclear is the area of substances of concern. So substances of concern are those that pose risks to environment and human health or hinder recyclability. And this is additional regulations on top of existing chemical regulations, and they will apply also. And another key aspect that's different compared to previously is that the substances coming under this classification will also be substances that negatively affect reuse and recycling of materials in a product, will be covered. So if there are chemicals applied to clothing and textiles for whatever reason that do not enable product life extension, that do not allow recycling, then these are going to be, as we understand it, substances that will be come under these regulations. I hear some sort of clicking, so please can everybody remain muted. Please can people remain muted. Please can people remain muted. Lillian, if you're on the line, please can you mute this person?
Désolé,
mute this person.
Sur les réglementations européennes.
Please can you remain muted? Thank you. So the legal obligations regarding substance of concern will be set up in separate delegated acts. They are closely linked to REACH. as we understand it, REACH is going through a revision process. It was targeted to be completed in 2025, but they are being delayed. So again, this is an area where there's quite a lot of uncertainty about the specific aspects of substances of concern that will fall under ESPR that are, for example, different or aligned to REACH. Certainly one thing that makes some sort of sense to me is bringing this point about substances that inhibit circularity processes, so as a new sort of area. So in ESPR, there are a lot of different developments. As I say, it's the unsold goods that are moving into sort of now being passed, but are also other links to other regulations, some of which are broad-based and some of which are specific that one also needs to keep an eye on. And again, for time, I'm going to move through this, but I predict we may finish a little bit late because of the technical difficulties in the beginning, which I apologize for. In theory, there are links to other regulations, but there doesn't seem to be, at least from the objective eye, clear interlinkages that let's say in terms of alignments to a number of these different regulations. So the issue of how these different regulations join up, they look as if in the surface they must be joined up, but in practice they seem to be developing as individual regulations. Within the Commission, I know there are there is a sort of technical term for it, but there's inter sort of DG consultation, and different DGs are managing different regulations, but I don't really fully understand how their linkages are being tackled. So product environmental footprint. So this is a standardized life cycle methodology that the Commission have developed through JRC. And they put in a very long 5-year process to look at this in relation to apparel and footwear, and publish product environmental footprint category rules for the sector last May. But these are currently voluntary guidance, but they are under discussion for potential use within the ESPR. So it's also referenced in the CSRD, and may also have some links to the Green Claims Directive. But again, this is another controversial piece of regulation that I'll mention in a small while. There are a number of criticisms of PEV and PEV-CR, which I won't go into detail. But again, it is important to keep an eye on, because there may be some sort of use of the PEV methodology in relation, for example, to the product regulations within the ESPR. And again, this I assume that the JRC is doing some work on. Textiles labeling regulation. So there's a fundamental revision of this regulation, really to particularly look at new topics in terms of specifically the textile regulation, in terms of circularity and sustainability information, care instructions, country of origin, sizing, and allergenic substances. So as we understand it, in Q2, the publications plan to happen. So this is, on top of the existing regulations. So again, how this then fits with the amendments to the Eco Design the EU Eco Label / ESPR label, how this links to the DPP, again, part of the difficulty and challenges. And there's difference between physical labels and digital labels. Again, this again, part of the many challenges about the information parts linked to the performance requirements. So empowering consumers for green transition. Effectively, this is a regulation that entered into force in 2024 and it is then going into place within member states where member states will need to create national laws in 2026, and they will apply, as we understand it, in September 2026. So this is making information much clearer on products' durability and repairability, for example, and really working on vague claims and general claims like green and eco-friendly terms, and really working against the whole area of greenwashing. Unclear to me about, let's say what are the, if there are fines associated with this. By the next webinars, we will get more clarity on this. Certainly, we are seeing fines coming in different countries now around false claims, and this greenwashing area is becoming more and more of an issue. We know that particularly why the sector should be concerned about this, because in a number of objective surveys that have been undertaken, some of the sector that has the most challenges in a sense with greenwashing is fashion and clothing sector. So it is a sector that's under scrutiny and needs to sort of tighten up in terms of the veracity of its claims. So we know that there is activity already going on at a member state level. So, for example, in Belgium, that there is some indication of government agencies going out and starting to check labelling already prior to the regulations coming in. So again, I'm just checking on the time. So I predict that we may well, for your own timing, and people have to leave, I predict that we may well have to finish. We may finish around about, including a few questions, around 10:15. So again, if anybody has to go, they have to go. So apologies for the technical details at the beginning. So Green Claims Directive, this is a controversial proposal that it's still really unclear about whether it's still in the sort of policy cycle, but effectively it was proposing that there would be regulation that would require third-party verification of claims, i.e. LCA-backed claims. Now, again, this was proposed. It was then seemed to be withdrawn. Then the commission came back saying, no, it's still live, but it's still really uncertain. That this has fallen part of this sort of process that's going on within the commission related to the sort of so-called omnibus process that I'll briefly mention later. That is looking at pulling back timelines on environmental targets due to competitive reasons, due to, let's say, philosophical reasons by the right. So this is sort of a part of a process that is going on in the commission at the moment. So at the moment it is unclear. It appears still to be there, but again, but also, I think again, the key part of this from a competitive point of view is if all products that placed on the market required, in a sense, verified labels from an LCA, this would be, hugely challenging for competitiveness because, let's say an LCA costs 10,000 quid per label per product. This would be a major challenge for many companies, but it's showing the direction of travel, particularly in relation to green claims. So Waste Framework Directive. So this originally the Waste Framework Directive was passed in 2008, establishing a legal framework treaty of waste. This was then amended in 2018, particularly bringing in separate collection of textile waste for reuse and recycling. That was due to come into force in January 2025. That brought in very specific targets that were time bound for reuse and recycling. The revision effectively, has really followed through on the strategic circular and sustainable textiles strategy, and supports the SDGs. So effectively, the regulation was passed in the 16th of October last year. The 20 months to transpose into national regulations. So by June 2027, these regulations will happen. And particularly, what's important about this for textile sector is that it will bring in extended producer responsibility schemes, and these will need to be fully operational by the 17th of April 2028, with micro SMEs having a 12-month derogation. So effectively, EPR means taking back products and either recycling or reusing them, and setting up schemes, either your own scheme working with a recycler to do that, or joining compliance schemes to fulfill your responsibilities. And again, there are examples of this in other sectors like automotive, packaging, and electronics. If you have the bandwidth to spend to understand the process, so there are models out there for other sectors. So again, effectively, there I will speed through some of these for time. So effectively, there will be these schemes out there that one will have to join to fulfill the recycling or reuse requirements. This will impact on basically all those placing products on the market, and there will also be requirements for online sellers to fulfill their obligations on this. There are a variety of products that will come under these regulations, and then there are various exemptions. So particularly used textiles will be exempted from this, as well as products that are assessed as fit for reuse, products that are derived from used or waste materials, and products produced by self-employed tailors. So there are already a number of schemes in place in different markets. The most evolved are France and the Netherlands, and other countries are exploring the development of EPR schemes. There are different approaches. For example, and what we've just done here is to compare and contrast the French and the Dutch system. And the French brought in their EPR scheme for textiles back in 2007. The Dutch brought theirs in 2023, with obligations in 2025. In France, it's very different, as I believe, to most EPR schemes, even for other products. Excuse me, in that there is one, in effect, PRO called Refashion. In the Netherlands, as we understand it, there are 3 PROs. Two specific ones, and one which is the European Recycling Platform. This was originally a platform or it maybe still is a platform that I know from the past, that was set up related to electronics. So they have a lot of knowledge, and maybe they've expanded to other categories. So the scope is broad in France, specific in the Netherlands. Again, the fee structure is unit-based in France, with eco-modulation, i.e. benefits for eco-design products. In the Netherlands, it's weight-based. So, I mean, what we have is different approaches happening within different national regulations. So what's again slightly unclear to me at this stage is how these relatively advanced national regulations will align with the different with the approach now being incorporated in the new let's say the new EPR regulations that all member states will have to apply. French are worth keeping an eye on, because they have already quite a significant amount of environmental regulations, and what we saw is, prior to 2015, France was not so advanced on environmental regulations, but after the Paris Accord, France really started to work proactively around product-based environmental regulations and circularity, and indeed have had influence not just in France, but also into the Commission and elsewhere. So also one needs to keep an eye on the EU waste shipment regulation that effectively will limit the export of textile waste and aims to encourage recycling and reuse within the within the EU. This entered into force in 2024, and most revisions will apply by 2026. There is discussion going on that this will also somehow be aligned to the Circular Economy Act in relation to retaining more, value in textiles and clothing within Europe, other than it being exported with the consequent impacts. What we're also seeing around the world is various countries putting in bans on imports of waste. So there's a sort of a global dynamic going on there. So again, I'm not going to plan to go in any detail on the CSRD, which has aimed to standardize ESG reporting, and also the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive that has really placed a lot more requirements in terms of accountability, in terms of human rights and the environment. So both of these pieces of regulations are complicated. They've been going through this omnibus approach, which is this approach that is slowing down targets, reducing and diluting clauses. And the reality is, it seems that the process has been resolved now, but the vast majority of the focus for this and the relevance of the sector will be on the very large brands and those large players in the sector more directly in terms of reporting, tracking, softer risks through the supply chain. So there will be reporting requirements and auditing and data requirements. But again, these will be focused on the bigger operations, but the small companies will still have to keep an eye on this, because there may be requirements that feed through the supply chain, particularly maybe those suppliers outside of Europe. So lots of uncertainties, as I highlighted. I'm just going to pick up some of these here. Still quite a lot of uncertainty around what will be the methodology that is used. Well, what performance requirements will be chosen for the product regulation for textiles and clothing? Will it be durability, reused material? Will it be repairability? What is the difference between this horizontal repairability requirement across all products and something specific that might be targeted at this sector? What is the difference between robustness that has been brought in as a criteria for discussion in the JRC report versus durability? What is the linkages with other regulations? We have DPP, there's ambiguity there. We've seen different timelines. For us, it seems that a publication of the DPP requirement for textiles following the product regulations would seem pretty sensible. This seems to be what the SEN documents seem to be indicating, but we're finding a lack of clarity in Commission communications on this. So again, the key part there is what part of DPP, what is going to be the content of the DPP. We will have more clarity, as I say, on the information architecture, but the content is going to be unclear. So again, Waste Framework Directive, still a lot of uncertainty. Please, can you remain muted? Somebody's gone unmuted. Please, can you remain muted, not unmuted? Sorry. So still a lot of uncertainties around the EPR schemes. How are the EPR schemes going to be built in different member states? What is the robustness of the recycling infrastructure? Because we may have targets for recycling and reuse, but we know there's a lot of vulnerability in terms of the recycling infrastructure in Europe at the moment. So how is that going to be resolved? Is there going to be more investment to build the recycling infrastructure? Or is there still going to be uncertainty? Will there need to be public-private investment to build up the infrastructure? So how are countries like the Netherlands and France going to align their national regulations with the European regulations? So again, just for time, I'm going to go through very quickly the standards, and probably what we may well do is, even without the delays at the beginning, excuse me, there's a lot of information in the standardization, so I knew I need to run through this very quickly. So, and we know that standardization in the sense of ISO and CEN is not necessarily always well understood in the sector. So we're talking about third-party objective standards that are built up through consensus of experts. We're not talking about individual producer-related standards that might apply. These are objective third-party standards. So there are a variety of ISO standards for the sector, that we're aware of, some of which, touch on environmental aspects. What has now happened is that CEN group was set up, around textiles and textile products, and now a circular textiles working group has been set up that is active. That CEN working group was set up in 2021 under the auspices of CEN-TEXBEL and NEN, and it's pretty active with over 19 countries and different organizations involved in this. A standard has already been published on environmental aspects, a vocabulary and terminology, standard, and other related, technical standards. Again, these are all guidance standards. Again, for clarification, they're not certification standards like you might find with ISO 9000 or ISO 14001. So they are guidance standards aiming to support people in tackling issues and integrating things into their processes. So there's a work program in place with a variety of different topics being considered. Particularly of note are focuses on different requirements in relation to circularity for clothing, workwear, and bed, bath, kitchen, and table textiles. That again, the second two, or certainly the third two, are outside ESPR. So there are other developments going on that are aligning to the ISO 59000 standard, and I'll come back to that in a second. So these are general principles and guidance. What is quite a useful document in development is a design guidance standard that is really covering how you bring circularity into the design and development process. There are already generic design and development standards out there, so-called eco-design or standards that are more generic, but this is the first that I've seen that really focuses particularly on this sector. So again, there are also standards looking at minimum, around durability that are worth being aware of because of the possible direction of ESPR, and also because of the direction of EPR there is also a standard that is in development around collecting, handling, sorting of textile waste. So again, moving very quickly to the end of the presentation, on a more generic, not sector-based based focus, we have a series of standards on circularity that have been published, again, emphasizing guidance standards. So a series of standards that were published in 2024 or 2025. And these, the most important ones, really have focused on the terms and the terminology, business models and measurement and product circularity data sheets, and also on secondary materials. So those standards were published in the core three first standards in May 2024. And really these are aimed at supporting organizations to bring circularity into their business models, processes and products. But being heavily involved, wearing my hat of head of circular economy committee for British standards, and being involved in eco design standards since the year 2000, these standards were a starting point. So there's been some criticism from industry that they're not practical enough. So they have moved into a revision process, and chairs have been appointed. So there is a revision process that will start at particularly on those first three standards that will be completed in 2028. There is new standards in development around EPR that isn't on this list. There is also a new standard on circular economy management, circular economy management standard. So, and also potentially this other joint work with IEC on DPP that I will update in the next reviews. So also within the UK of note is that UK published the first guidance standard on integrating circularity into organisations, and this now is going to be moving into a revision phase in 2026. So any UK organisations that are interested in engaging with this, please contact me or BSI. Mirroring the ISO developments, there's TC 473, which is a circular economy standard that's focused on European developments. There are different working groups that are mirroring the circularity aspects within working groups within ISO. And there are new working groups around information sharing, notably not called Digital Product Passport at the moment, but following a lot of the processes, extended producer responsibility and remanufacturing. Also of note, and is worth keeping an eye on, and some people from the textiles and clothing sector have looked at these, there is something called Senelec JTC10 on materials efficiency, that was linked to the previous eco design regulation that effectively is covering product circularity. And really this covered many areas that are very relevant to the sector, durability. Again, although they were originally focused on the energy related product sector, a lot of the principles are generic. So these are published standards. What is also happening as a result of the ESPR activities that are bringing circularity or product circularity across all products is this SEN group has been requested to broaden its focus beyond energy related products. And what it also is perhaps of relevance there is then a new working group, working group 8, that delivered a circular economy circular design standard. So this standard was published in November 2024. Still is, perhaps more emphasis on electronic sector, but also is quite broad. So there are lessons to be learned that one can draw on that can be brought, in terms of bringing circularity into design and development. So And again, there is other support out, more generic support out there. There is a standard on 62430 that is a standard guidance standard around eco design or environmentally conscious design within design and development. And there's 14006 that essentially brings eco design into environmental management systems. So for those of you who have ISO 14001 or ISO 9001, this guide brings guidance about how you bring eco design under those standards, under the product-based parts of that. So sorry for the whistle-stop tour, as it's a highly complicated area, and again, apologies. Sorry, please, can we remain muted? Lillian, can we find the person and mute them?
To je to, Propolis već imam, tako to je to.
Please, can we remain muted? Please, can we remain muted? I can't hear myself talk. So in terms of the implications for SMEs, there is a lot of activity out there. There are regulations that are now directly going to impact on the sector that are already in place. There are regulations that are coming that one will need to prepare for. Even for SMEs in the sector, there will be impacts. So my recommendation is to firstly start by allocating somebody part-time at least to try and monitor these regulations and determine those regulations that have most impact on you the quickest. So that will mean setting up maybe a legislative monitoring file with deadlines and requirements. It will be starting to think through some of the implications of some of these regulations out into the future. What are the implications for strategically as a business? What are the implications for design and development, and working with suppliers particularly? It was quite interesting recently. We ran an event with India, and we've had some conversations related to Bangladesh, and I was interested to hear that there haven't been awareness raising activities around some of the regulations for some of the players yet. It may be that a number of the big brands are waiting until there's more certainty related to regulations. But given that there will need to be significant changes in design and manufacture, there would seem to be quite a sensible idea to at least broadly start conversations with suppliers about some of the implications for product design and development, in the future. There's also going to be implications in terms of logistics, in terms of take back for recycling, reuse, EPR. So again, very complicated and difficult to track even for us. Again, I hope the summary has been useful, and again, hopefully my colleague got to join and will be open to a couple of questions. Lillian, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. So there's one question around, are the working groups currently developing digital product passport standards specifically focused on the fashion and textile sector, or are they addressing DPP in a more general cross-industry context? That's the first part of the question. And then additionally, is there a specific technical committee or working group dedicated exclusively to DPP standards for the fashion and textile industry?
So the DPP developments will follow the product regulations. So within Eco-Design for Sustainable Products regulations, the first delegated acts for DPP will be textiles DPP and aluminium and steel DPP. So they will be product based, and this is highlighted in the working plan. So if you want clarification of that, please download the 2025 to 2030 working plan, because that does specifically highlight that. As I understand it, there isn't something specifically happening on the textiles group within SEN, but again, I would hunt that standard down and try and have dialogue with the Secretariat, or go to your national standards body to do that. There may well be specific activities going on within trade associations. So Eurotext is the most is very much following the regulations, and I'm sure they will have a working group on textiles DPP, but there may well be other activity within national textiles and clothing standardization, textiles and within different trade associations.
And then a final question: is footwear in or out of scope of the first implementation?
So within, as I understand it, within the ESPR footwear, in terms of the product regulation, it is out of scope. So they're looking at separate regulation for footwear. But as I understand it, again, you would need to go off and clarify it. But as I understand it, footwear does fall within EPR, and as I understand it, footwear does fall within the unsold goods as well. But I would recommend that you clarify that with maybe trade association or other relevant bodies.
No further questions.
Okay, I think if anybody does have any burning questions, we've got a couple of minutes more. As I see that 63 people are still on the line. I know we did have over 200 registered, so it did show interest. Sorry, because of, again, those technical issues, I couldn't see how many people finally attended. If we don't hear any burning questions or have any burning comments within the next few minutes, I will say thank you very much. I'm sorry I had to go through that very fast, because there was a lot of information to go through there. I hope you found it useful, and I hope, and I'm seeing on my screen, that my colleague Lillian was able to record this, and we will distribute the recording in due course, assuming we do not have any further technical issues. So thank you again for your time, and apologies for the technical challenges at the beginning.